David Gold, a single father raising his 6-year-old daughter, never complained despite having little assistance. The girl seemed to grasp the challenges her father faced, rarely causing trouble. In fact, she actively tried to assist him, whether by dusting the house or making his morning coffee. David's wife had tragically passed away a year ago under mysterious circumstances. The haunting reality was that she went on vacation to Miami that fateful summer, deciding to swim during a storm and drowning. Her body was never found, leaving David with only a few personal belongings she left on the beach. The grief-stricken man blamed himself for letting his wife go on vacation alone. Despite his inability to join her due to work commitments, he had pleaded with her to wait for another month so they could go together as a family. However, Aurora remained adamant about her Miami plans during the peak holiday season. David, unable to comprehend the urgency, fell into a deep depression upon receiving the devastating news. Only his sense of responsibility and concern for his daughter prevented him from succumbing to grief. Each day, Maya, the little daughter, asked the same poignant question. "Dad, when is Mom coming home?" David, grappling with the truth, concocted various excuses to shield Maya from the harsh reality, hoping to delay the inevitable heartbreak. In an attempt to distract Maya, David frequently took her to the park to feed swans and observe squirrels. One day, he suggested a picnic by the river, noticing the sparkle of excitement in his daughter's eyes. To avoid the crowd, David set up their camp away from the bustling activity, creating a special moment for father and daughter. With Maya by his side, they constructed a fire and began grilling sausage skewers. Throughout the process, Maya hummed the lyrics of a simple song. The tune imperfectly rhymed, but was all the more charming, narrating the adventures of a little boy exploring a magical forest. This song, passed down from David's mother to him and then to his daughter, became a beloved part of Maya's daily repertoire. Sitting beside the crackling fire, Maya softly sang the song her father had shared with her. As the day heated up, Maya expressed a desire to swim in the river. Initially considering it, David ultimately deemed her too young for such an endeavor. Instead, he encouraged her to engage in activities like playing ball or riding the bike stored in the car's trunk. Obediently nodding, Maya followed her father's suggestion, and soon, thoughts of swimming faded from her mind. As the temperature rose, David relocated to loungers shaded by trees. The sun's warmth and the serene atmosphere lulled him into a state of relaxation, and, unaware of the passing time, he dozed off. David, accustomed to strenuous workdays, believed his eyes were shut for only a brief moment. Yet, upon awakening, Maya was nowhere to be found. Frantically searching the surroundings and calling out for his daughter, David rushed to the riverbank. A sinking feeling enveloped him as he observed Maya's tiny sandals and the doll she always carried, abandoned on the shore. "This can't be happening. She couldn't have. I forbade her from even coming near the river," David repeated to himself, desperately trying to convince his racing mind that Maya couldn't have disobeyed him and entered the river without permission. He paced along the riverbank like a cornered animal, scouring the riverside bushes and the small forest nearby. But Maya was nowhere to be found. It was then that the horrifying realization struck him. She might have drowned in the river, just like her mother. Tears welled up in David's eyes as he grappled with this devastating possibility. Recognizing the need for assistance, he called the police and rescue divers, who spent hours searching the river's bottom. Despite their efforts, Maya's body was not recovered. "The current is very strong here, sir. It could have carried the body several miles downstream. We've even had cases where bodies washed up in the neighboring state," one of the searchers explained. No, my daughter is alive," David shouted, his eyes filled with tears. However, the police remained skeptical and even cast doubt on David's parental responsibilities. "Are you blaming me for what happened? I fell asleep for 10 minutes. David tried to justify himself. But the police were unconvinced. They quickly drew conclusions, handcuffing David and placing him in the patrol car. The investigation proceeded rapidly, and David felt he was being framed. False witnesses emerged, claiming he couldn't handle his parental responsibilities and often left Maya alone. "But that isn't true," David protested in court, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The jury believed a crime had occurred, holding David responsible. Overwhelmed with grief, he couldn't comprehend the cruelty of the situation. The devastated father received a 6-year sentence in a state county jail, In prison, he kept to himself, avoiding any groups. His sole focus was on getting out and uncovering those responsible for framing him. It was a harrowing ordeal for a man who had lost both his wife and only daughter. This persistent thought robbed David of sleep and any semblance of peace of mind. Unfortunately, his time behind bars was far from incident-free. Almost from the outset, David became the target of bullying by inmates associated with one of the most dangerous criminal gangs in prison. They sought to humiliate him, hoping to provoke a reaction and an impulsive attack. Realizing the dangerous game being played, the lonely widower stoically endured the humiliation, resisting the temptation to fall into their trap. He understood that someone on the outside had a vested interest in eliminating him through such brutal means. Without the intervention of an influential fellow prisoner, David might not have survived until his release. George, an elderly man in his 60s with a lengthy prison history, took David under his wing. Recognizing David's inherent goodness, George saw echoes of his own deceased son in him. They spent their prison days discussing books, playing chess, and sharing stories from their lives. It was George who disclosed that a powerful individual had paid a substantial sum to have David killed in prison. While some might consider 6 years a relatively short sentence, for David, each day felt like an eternity, marked by a relentless cycle of hopelessness, longing, and memories of his past life. Crossing off days on a small calendar, David eagerly anticipated the moment when he would finally regain his freedom. Thanks to George's protection, hostile inmates left him alone. On the eve of David's release, George discreetly passed him a note with a phone number. "Call this number and say that I sent you. They will help you and sort out your case," George explained, catching David off guard. The scent of freedom was intoxicating and dizzying. Returning to his hometown, David tried to embark on a new chapter in his life. During this time, most people had forgotten about his past, and some even removed him from their contact lists. However, the challenges of securing employment proved daunting, as none of the employers were willing to hire an ex-convict. Certainly, David endeavored to prove that he had been wrongly convicted, but his efforts fell on indifferent ears. Despite his persistent attempts, securing a permanent job remained an elusive challenge. It was during this struggle that he recalled the note from George. Upon calling the provided number, David was promptly invited to a meeting at an inconspicuous cafe. The person he encountered there identified himself as Samuel, and without delving into too many inquiries, extended a helping hand to the ex-convict. "I need a job, and one more thing," David began tentatively. Samuel, with a reassuring gaze, encouraged him, saying, "Don't be shy. You can say whatever you need to. I owe George my life, and will do everything to repay my debt." Sighing sadly, David commenced his narrative, recounting the loss of his wife and daughter. Samuel listened in silence, occasionally seeking clarifications. "I think I can help you. This case isn't as simple as it seems at first glance. As for the job, it's a done deal. You'll work at a construction site for now, and then we'll see," Samuel concluded, bidding farewell and rising from the table. David's mood underwent an instant improvement. He now felt like a man and a citizen of his own country, no longer just an ex-convict devoid of prospects and purpose. The job Samuel arranged for him was demanding, yet David found satisfaction in its simplicity. From morning to evening, he toiled with heavy stones, mixed cement mortar, and assisted builders with superior qualifications. By evening, David could barely stand, but the physical exhaustion facilitated peaceful sleep, sparing him haunting thoughts of his past. As time elapsed, Samuel remained silent, offering no updates. David began to suspect that Samuel had fulfilled his duty and chose not to delve further into his case. Assigned to various construction sites by the organization David worked for, he eventually joined a group of builders tasked with renovating an orphanage. Amidst the dilapidated structure, the orphans moved from room to room during the repairs. Observing them, David couldn't help but think of his daughter Maya, who had passed away 7 years ago. One day, while engaged in plasterwork in one of the rooms, David heard a peculiar song. It emanated from one of the girls walking down the hall. The lyrics of the song sounded vaguely familiar to David, and as he listened more closely, he recognized it as the very song he had taught Maya. David turned around and saw a girl with curls resembling his daughter, but since the girl appeared to be more than 11 years old, he couldn't confirm if she was Maya or not. Approaching the girl, He gently touched her shoulder and looked into her eyes. "How do you know this song, David?" he asked, attempting to soften his voice. The girl smiled with embarrassment and replied softly, "I'm not sure. I don't remember anything from my past. They found me at the train station 6 years ago, but I don't remember anything before then." Sweat dripped down David's forehead. Given the girl's age and the timeline of her story, she could potentially be his missing daughter. However, to confirm or refute his suspicion, David needed concrete evidence. He promptly went to the director of the orphanage. After sharing his story, the director's face revealed his skepticism. "Are you sure she's your daughter? All the evidence you have boils down to some song, and the girl's name isn't even Maya, it's Emma. I know you got sent to prison for failing to take care of your own daughter, and now you want to get her back," the director said, emphasizing the last word. David least expected such a response. Though he could be mistaken, only Maya could know the song, and no one else had even heard of it. Despite David's efforts to convince the director that he was right, he was not only rejected, but also forbidden from approaching the girl. Tears filled David's eyes as he realized there was nothing he could do. He wanted to scream to let the world know he was right, but he held back. It was at this point that Samuel finally called David with some intriguing information. Samuel had done exceptional work that yielded incredible results. However, when David heard Samuel's revelations, his lips trembled and tears welled up in his eyes. "Are you sure? Is this really what happened?" he exclaimed in astonishment. Samuel nodded and showed David a photograph of his wife, Aurora, in the arms of an unfamiliar gray-haired man. "Your wife is alive. She deliberately faked her own death to live with her influential and wealthy lover. It was this man who orchestrated the whole ruse of drowning in the ocean," Samuel explained. David's surprise was immense, but Samuel's next revelation was even more shocking. "Your daughter Maya is also alive. She didn't drown in the river." David least expected such a response. Though he could be mistaken, only Maya could know the song, and no one else had even heard of it. Despite David's efforts to convince the director that he was right, he was not only rejected, but also forbidden from approaching the girl. Tears filled David's eyes as he realized there was nothing he could do. He wanted to scream to let the world know he was right, but he held back. It was at this point that Samuel finally called David with some intriguing information. Samuel had done exceptional work that yielded incredible results. However, when David heard Samuel's revelations, his lips trembled and tears welled up in his eyes. "Are you sure? Is this really what happened?" he exclaimed in astonishment. Samuel nodded and showed David a photograph of his wife, Aurora, in the arms of an unfamiliar gray-haired man. "Your wife is alive. She deliberately faked her own death to live with her influential and wealthy lover. It was this man who orchestrated the whole ruse of drowning in the ocean," Samuel explained. David's surprise was immense, but Samuel's next revelation was even more shocking. "Your daughter Maya is also alive. She didn't drown in the river." "What happened to her?" David exclaimed. "Your wife and her lover took Maya while you were sleeping. They wanted the girl to live with them. It was them who paid for you to get killed in prison. But a year later, Aurora broke up with her partner, so she left her daughter at the station to start a new relationship," Samuel explained. Tears welled up in David's eyes as he realized that he had lost 6 years of his life serving time in prison for other people's sins. As it turned out, Maya was so deeply affected by her mother's actions that she had a nervous breakdown and lost her memory. This was why Maya didn't recognize David at the orphanage and couldn't recall her own name. "You can take these documents to the police. Just don't tell them where you got them from. You have to understand that what I do isn't always legal," Samuel cautioned. Following his advice, David took action. About 2 weeks later, Aurora was arrested in a California hotel and caught in the arms of yet another wealthy man. The accusations brought against her were sufficient to land her in prison for a long time. David opted not to attend the court session, not wanting to face the woman who betrayed him and took away his family and freedom. Instead, he gained custody of Maya and took her to a specialist who helped her recover her memory. Bit by bit, Maya remembered her past and was able to return to her former life, overcoming the hurdles she faced. Now that all the trials were over, David felt like he was on cloud 9. Having weathered numerous misfortunes, he emerged as a winner, even though many had previously considered him an outright noob.